Hello, welcome back to Lumps of Life. My name is Jared Lumsden, and joining me today is jazz musician, butchered that already, turned author, and with a very large spiritual experience, Mr. Eugene Samolin. Thanks for joining me.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Jared, for having me.
Well, I absolutely butchered the intro. I really thought that was going to come out a lot smoother, and it did not work out very well. So we did not start that great, but here we are. So you had a
Mhm.
very interesting profile. The whole gist of what I've tried to do with this is just kind of get to speak to all walks of life about their experiences, things that have happened throughout life, failures, successes, traumas, basically whatever comes up. And we had connected on LinkedIn, and your profile was fascinating to me because there was a lot of similarities. And it was instantly like, oh, this is really cool. There's a lot of similarities here. This seems like this would be super interesting. And the thing that hit me the most was it said that you were a jazz musician, and then you had a pretty profound experience at the Tree of Life, and that kind of altered, I guess, your path in life.
Yeah, so it definitely altered my outlook on life, my philosophy, my understanding, to have seen through the veil to the deeper reality that lies beneath all everyday existence, to have seen that we are all part of a great tree. It was like looking down upon the world from a higher dimension and
Oh,
seeing that from your perspective, it looks like you're over there and I'm over here and we're completely disconnected. And that's true from a third dimensional perspective. But when you see things from a higher perspective and you see the higher truth, you see that in fact, we're part of the same great tree, the great tree of life. And it just so happens that Jesus is in the midst of the tree of life. I didn't believe in Jesus. I didn't believe in God. I thought that I poured scorn on anything that was biblical.
yeah.
I thought that there could be a higher power. I thought that the universe was conscious. I did believe in a general consciousness, but to think of the tale of a man with a bushy white beard in the clouds overruling everything, like that seemed like total nonsense to me.
Yeah.
But when I saw when I saw the tree of life, I did actually see that there was a man in the midst of the tree of life, and it could only have been Jesus.
Oh, that's so
So, in
interesting.
terms of my life path, yeah, I mean, in terms of my life path, I think that I was an author. I wanted to be an author, and I'm still an author. But what it changed inside of me was, a completely new person. I was reborn. It was almost like coming out of the womb. After I had that vision, it was like coming out of the womb and entering into the world with fresh new eyes. And I actually, believe it or not, Jared, that it wasn't all bells and whistles and roses. As a matter
Hmm.
of fact, um, what I went through after that, it was like what was going on inside was the greatest rapture and the greatest glory, seeing the world with fresh eyes. But on the outside, my life was spiraling, believe it or not.
Yeah. Oh, I
My
believe
life
it
was
because
going way, way, yeah,
it.
my life was going way out of kilter, out of whack. And I went through a whole lot of darkness, and I experienced a lot of things. There were instances with demonic entities, and also instances with angels and demons, and all kinds of different things. But I've reached a place now in my life, thank goodness, where things seem to have come back into balance again, and the inside and the outside seem to have coalesced and come back into balance, and I'm in a place where I can talk, I guess, rationally and
Yeah.
objectively about it, as opposed to the pure, unadulterated
It-
passion that would be pouring out, a few years ago after it, and perhaps looked pretty crazy to a lot of people.
yeah.
And it kind of turns into this spiral because you're so sure about what you've seen and about what's going on, and you're so passionate about it, and then someone says, no, they reject your truth. And I think that everybody needs to be seen, and that
Hmm.
I accept that other people have different truths to what my truth is. And I think that when we look at a lot of the division in the world, and a lot of it comes from misunderstanding, and a lot of it comes from not being able to accept other people's truths. And
Hmm.
I went through a stage where I just really needed someone to validate what I had seen. I just really need someone to accept my truth, and I found it really, really hard to come by. And then that made things worse, so I became even more angry about it, and it just went down that real rabbit hole. And it wasn't until I took some time out, stepped back, put everything down, and said, stop. I'm going to stop trying. I'm going to stop doing everything. I'm going to stop trying to prove myself. I'm just going to sit back and kind of kind of do nothing. But in a way, it's also allowing, I guess,
Oh,
God to do his thing. And it
yeah.
wasn't until I'd sat back and done that for a good 6 to 8 to 9 months or so, where I then finally emerged in a state of peace and a state of balance. And it was then that I started writing full time. And I've written 2 novels since then, and 2 visionary pamphlets, and here I am now talking to you about it. So
Yeah.
that gives you a brief overview of basically
So,
what I've been through. Just
so,
the short and
oh,
curly of it.
so many things stand out there. First of all, it was like you
Yeah.
were inside my brain the last 5 years, because pretty much everything that you said, minus the tree of life portion, has been pretty much my life the past few years, where it's been this up and down roller coaster. How long ago was that this all started for you?
Unbelievably, it was back in 2015.
Okay.
So that's a long time ago. That's a generation ago now. It's a really
Yeah.
long time. And I had times where I did think, oh, if only I had have got my act together straight away.
Y-
And
But then you
I
wouldn't have
even
learned all the
beat
cool
myself
lessons
up a
you
bit.
learned.
Exactly. That's it. When I look back, I go, hang on a second. Look at who I was then. I was riddled with vices, honestly, Jared.
Yeah.
I cannot begin to name. And I listened to some of
Same.
your other podcasts, and you've been over it with some of your other guests, the type of vices that you think you're alone, but it's really common. A lot of people do have these same kind of vices. I was utterly riddled with them. And
Yeah.
I look back and I say, I wasn't ready at that time. And the transformation that I've been through since then. I remember, I know that you said something like, oh, I became addicted to the gym. Like you
Hmm.
lost a lot of weight and you became addicted to going to the gym. I became addicted to overcoming vices. And, I looked at whatever vice that I had, and
Hmm.
I said, that's going to be the next thing that I overcome. Um, and I think that that's actually what is meant in a deeper sense by repentance. When we talk about
Yeah.
repentance and what it is to repent, eventually you reach a point where you go, what's something in my life that I can improve upon? Okay, I'm going to improve upon that. And that ends up continuing that process of repentance. It turns into this process of, for me, of really working to perfect yourself, knowing at
Hmm.
the same time that you are only human and that it's okay to not be completely perfect. But, I kind of became addicted to repentance in a way, and going, there's something that I can do better there and something that I can do better there. And that process of
Always.
refining and purifying yourself. And I found that to be incredibly rewarding for me.
It
That's the
feels
sort of thing that's let. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Sorry to interrupt you. It
No worries.
absolutely it all correlates together because I feel the same way with all of those things. Like the more I pour into my body, the more energy I feel, the more confidence I feel, the more I pour into the repentance of pulling out these bad habits. I talked about that on one of them as well, that they all seem to always lead back to what they talk about with the seven deadly sins, where you go through these habits that you have and it's like, whoa, like I didn't realize that was causing this problem. I didn't realize that led back to that. And it's just things that you do normally, just day to day things that you've been doing forever that you think are normal. And then you start having conversations, you start reading things, you start looking into what you're doing and how you can be a better person every day. And they kind of start showing themselves to you in different ways. And it's almost like I talk about it like a video game where it's almost like you compete in levels where you figure out what that thing is that you're working on and then you kind of battle through it and you pass your test or whatever it is that kind of falls in line to, I guess, see if you're following along, I suppose, where like you kind of figure out what that habit is, what that loop is, that like, okay, well, this thing's continuously negative in my life. What is this loop? What is it doing? What am I doing? And when you kind of, I guess, track them back to whatever that is that triggers it, it always tends to open up some sort of new level in my brain. Anytime that I've bet on myself and I've not fallen back into old patterns, old wirings, or if I'm cognizant of them and I see them in the moment, it's like, ooh, we're not falling back into that one. It tends to level you up, and it really is like an addiction. You get addicted to that good release of whatever that is, that anxiety, that mental fog, whatever it is that you're experiencing. You feel that euphoric release, that happiness, and then the next day you're like, whoa, that was just because I talked something out. That was because I just did something a little bit different. And you can do it with so many things too, but it really does become this like interesting addiction where you just like almost want to keep solving the problems.
Exactly. Exactly. You know, Jared, I think that every person is really, really special. I think that every person is more incredible and more special than what we give ourselves credit for. I think that God looks at us and he sees that we are so much more than what we ourselves give ourselves credit for. And that within every person, beneath the vices, beneath the trauma, beneath the triggers, beneath the hurts, the hang-ups and the habits, beneath all those things, there is an incredible God-like being just bursting, waiting to get out. You know, when I was given
Yeah.
the vision of the tree of life, I saw what our heritage is. And not just me, Jared, everyone, you, everyone who's listening, we have divine heritage. All of us do. And that if we can just get through those things and overcome those vices and we get help to do that, by the way. You know, we are constantly guided and shepherded, um, gently when we need to be, harshly when we need to be, in the best possible way for us to
Hmm.
be able to overcome those things, because God wants to see us become everything that we are truly meant to be.
Yeah.
As an author, I study plot templates, and there's a plot template called The Hero's Journey. You might have heard of it before. Hollywood are all over this, and
Hmm.
pretty much every movie you watch, you know, because it's such an accurate. It's not just a means of telling a story. It's a psychological imprint that is blueprinted into the human psyche. And what you find is that when you go through this hero's journey, the stages of the hero's journey, it's almost the perfect blueprint for overcoming everything that you have that's inhibiting you,
Yeah.
and to reaching your full potential. And so I've found for me as an author that I don't just apply these plot templates, the hero's journey, to my stories in terms of writing good plots, but I apply them to my life. And I've found with a lot of things that there might be something in my life that I'll always get up to a certain level. You know how you were talking about it's like we're in a game, and
Hmm.
I'm my own avatar that I've built, and you're your avatar that you've built, and we're all playing on this game, and there are certain levels. It might be I get up to this certain bit in this game or on this level, and I continually fail there. I can't figure out how to cross that
Hmm.
bridge, or I can't figure out how to defeat that bad guy, or I can't figure out how to solve that puzzle. Now, I continually fall down in that same spot. I've found that by looking at this plot template, the hero's journey, it actually identifies, that's that point there, and you can
Yeah.
look what comes after that. What's the hero supposed to do in that place there, and that when you do that, you find, I found a way through, and I found a way
It,
to get past that, and I think it's really universally applicable, because basically the way that it was created was by looking at all the different myths that are told all over the world, not just in Western civilization, but also in every civilization from all different places. When you look at the myths that get told and you put them all together into one great big story, it comes up with this hero's journey, and
yeah.
that's the basic template. So
It,
as I said, it looks like it's been inbuilt into humanity, and
it really does seem like we all live in these weird like wiring cycles where, I mean, obviously we're on completely different sides of the planet. It is like I'm in the past and you are in the future as we're talking right now. So, but the fact that we are on completely different parts of the world and we've had such similar experiences, such similar mindset shifts, all like coinciding to where now we're sitting here talking right now. It's super interesting because a lot of the stuff you just said, if you take that step back and listen, it almost always gives you the answer. It may not be the answer that you want, it may not be the answer that you think is coming in that moment, but it always gives you what you need. It may not always give you what you want, it may not give you it in the time that you want it to come, but it always seems to fall in place. And then there's those like moments where things will hit and happen where I felt like I'm on the right track, I'm doing the right thing, but then something will pop up and show me, like you said earlier, of lifting the veil, and it like almost shows you the answers when you need it. The less you try to control it, the more you just kind of let things play out day to day. You live presently. You try to take the time away from the phone, away from all the vices that we were talking about earlier. It always tends to give you those answers, even in those hardest moments, like when you want to run to the dopamine, when you want to run and get away from those feelings. For me, if I sit in it and I let those feelings come, it same thing. Something always processes out of that. And then it's like you get another piece of the puzzle, you get another level, and it shows you where you're weak, I guess, in multiple places where it's like it's trying to strengthen you and build you to the best version of yourself. And it almost points out your weaknesses at times, where those things that just consistently scare the shit out of you, where you're like, I don't think I want to do that. Face it, go after it, see what happens. It always, for me, these stupid little things that I've been afraid to do or I shy away from, or those like moments you get to have a tough conversation and you're like, yeah, nope, I don't want to do that. If you just face them, just, oh, all right, well, here's what we're doing now. You break that level of that angst in your body and it becomes easier, it becomes normal, and you start to, I don't know, feel those synchronicities, see those synchronicities, feel those things that come in that kind of whisper to you, I guess, and guide you on the right path. And they always tend to show up when you need them.
absolutely. Yeah. There's a saying that goes, in the cave that you fear to enter lies your greatest treasure.
Yeah.
And that kind of reminds me of what you were saying there, that when you confront the darkness, rather than fleeing from it, rather than going, I don't want to deal with that. I'm going to go back to one of my other vices. I'm going to go and eat a bunch of fatty food, or, heaven forfend, I'm going to go back and, use narcotics to make me feel better. That you're only giving that darkness a place to live and a place to stay within you. But when you confront that darkness and you shine your light upon it, the light that has been given to you, then all of a sudden you can look it in the eye, and you might find that it's not so scary, that perhaps you don't have so much to be afraid of.
Yeah. And it really does alleviate.
That in fact that and that in fact that you have everything you need to overcome it. And yeah, I mean, there was a lot of things that I was thinking when you were saying that. But another thing that I was thinking was, how important it is to be able to see other people's point of view.
Mm-hmm.
Like you were saying, you are in the northern hemisphere and I'm in the southern hemisphere. Do you know that in the northern hemisphere, I'm not sure if you pay much attention to the moon, but the moon, you know how the moon waxes and wanes?
Mm-hmm.
So in the northern hemisphere, the moon waxes and wanes from right to left.
Okay.
But in the southern hemisphere, the moon waxes and wanes from left to right, because you and I, we're actually upside down. We're actually upside down to one another right now. If you were to actually look at us, you'd see that we're standing upside down to one another. So say we were to sort of sit here and I would just say, Jared, which way does the moon wax and wane? And we'd never seen things from each other's point of view. And you'd say, well, it waxes from right to left. I look at the moon every single night and I can see that it waxes from right to left. And I'd say, no, you're either lying or you're a fool, because I watch the moon every single night and I see that it waxes from left to right. Now, who's true? What's the truth? Who's correct?
Both
of us. It depends on where you're. Yeah, exactly. It depends on where you're looking at the moon from. So I think that a lot of the problems in the world, that they don't necessarily come because people hate each other or because people don't like each other. It's just because they don't understand where the other person is coming from. They don't understand what the other person's point of view is. And that if you could put yourself into somebody else's shoes and see it from their perspective, chances are you'd reach the same conclusions as them. So when I wrote my first book, Rising Karma, which tells the true story of when I was given the tree of life, and I knew nothing about religion, but having Jewish ancestry, I went first to see a rabbi, and then I went to see a priest, and then I went to see an imam. And from my point of view, it looked to me like every one of those religions had come from the same God that I had seen.
Yeah.
And I thought that I was going to be the one to unite them, naive as I was. Didn't quite realize what I was up against.
I like the goal, though. That's a solid goal.
Yeah, that's it. My heart was in the right place.
Absolutely.
But so
then you see the real world.
I gave it a go.
Damn.
I gave it a go, and then I thought, okay, I think I'll just go back to being an author, because telling stories is something that I think I can, I'm passionate about. It's something that I can do. And but anyway, the point that I'm trying to make was that I think a lot of it comes down to not anyone necessarily being categorically right or wrong.
Yeah.
Being correct, absolutely. From a certain perspective, it is absolutely true. But in terms of it, looking in terms of how we're going to build a better world, are we going to build a better world? Are we going to turn heaven into earth by destroying anybody who thinks differently to us, or by understanding there are other points of view that, like I was saying with the moon waxing left to right or right to left, taking that as an analogy, that's really the way forward. And I believe that that's God's perspective, that God has that perspective, and that God can see every different point of view. So yeah, not to get too much into the theology, because I'm not a theologist, but speaking from the experience that I've had, um, I always use that as my foundation,
Yeah.
because what I saw firsthand, and it was intimate contact with the divine, and I found that drawing from that, I've found truths all across the board, not in just in monotheism, but also in other religions as well, that all seem to reinforce what I saw when I was given the vision of the tree of life. So, I'm really into breaking down divisions and unifying all kinds of spirituality and religion. That's probably more on a personal note.
Yeah.
On more of a sort of professional, public facing note, it's more about telling entertaining stories, and within that there is that message of peace and that message of hope, and that message that evolution has a direction, and that every person is more special probably than what they give themselves credit for, because at the core
Yeah.
of it, um, at the core of it, the feeling that accompanied what I saw was perhaps more pertinent than the actual vision itself. And the feeling was the incredible love that God has put into creating us, the incredible love that Jesus has for all people, and that goes beyond any point of doctrine or point of dogma, that it really comes down to that divine love, that divine compassion, and that thing that we are all connected very, very deeply. So
Well, and
that's,
I've always thought
basically
that, like, it seems like if you read about most religions, and this is something that's all very new to me as well, so I'm not super well versed on it, but it seems like the gist of most of them is being a good person and trying to do better for yourself, and not murdering people. And it seems like that's where it always goes, is where the perspective isn't the same, or people think like, oh, my thing's right, your thing's wrong. And I think everyone has a piece of the puzzle. We're all human, we're all wired very similarly. Just because we speak different languages or we have different races, whatever the case may be, there's still that human element that, I mean, just like what we're talking about, where we're on completely different sides of the world having this conversation because we both have a very similar mindset and have had similar things pop up in our heads that have brought us to this moment. And it's fascinating because you look at across the board and it all seems like that, where we're all just people. We all have different words for different things and different, but what if it's all one thing? What if we all have a piece of the puzzle that guides us to that right direction? And obviously it seems like in most cases the powers that be kind of guide us in the direction of hostility and not being on the same page, not speaking on taboo topics, whether it be religion, finances, politics. What, like, it's always been that taboo, don't speak about these things, don't offend people. But I think that's how you learn, is understanding that everyone has a different perspective, everyone has a life journey, everyone has a purpose, and it's just finding your own thing rather than wanting to follow the herd, I guess, and kind of fall into that, well, if I'm just like everyone else, no one can make fun of me. If I'm just like everyone else, I can't stand out and fail. And but I think that's a big part of it too, is being able to find your thing, fail, find your authentic voice, find your authentic passion, whatever it is, and then being able to put that out in the world for you to be happy and feel that fulfillment. And I think everybody has that. Like you've said that multiple times, that everybody's special. And I think everyone has that. Whatever your thing may be, there's something that lights up that little kid in you that makes you happy and makes you want to get up and get out of bed every morning. And it's like as humans, we all adapted that same mindset, that this is the way to do life, or you're out of your mind. Don't think outside of the box, don't do this. But it seems like the same people keep making money, and we all keep following the same kind of guidance and guidelines. So there might be a different way to go about it in life. So I want
Mm.
to kind of go into something. So what, when you had the vision with the tree of life, was that like, what was that experience like what were you doing? Where was your head at in life? Like, what was this moment like for you?
Absolutely. I will definitely answer that. I just want to touch on something that you
Yeah.
were saying that I thought of, and that is that life is not meaningless. There is a school of thought that says life is just absurd. It's a series of meaningless coincidences, and it eventually amounts to nothing. Uh, that's not true. Life is absolutely jam-packed with meaning. It's very meaningful. In fact, before there was even creation, there was meaning, there was a plan, there was a destination. And when you take every single person's story and you look at it from a bird's eye view, you'll find an unbelievably beautiful pattern, like a tapestry, and it's an incredibly beautiful story. And I completely agree with you that the best thing that you can do, not only for yourself, but for everybody else, is that you can find that thing about yourself that is fits into all of that, and which is a story that nobody else can tell but you. And and when you step back and you look at it all, it really is all a really beautiful story. And I know that when we're in those moments of sorrow, when we're in those moments of suffering or trauma, it's incredibly difficult to see how this can be beautiful or how there can be meaning to this. But there is a kind of grand narrative going on from beginning to end. And the suffering that you're feeling or the pain that you're feeling, and I saw this, by the way, I'm not just saying this because it's nice words, I actually saw this, that it stems from way back when, and it's inherited. It's the vast majority of it that where you don't have control over it. It's come from way back when, and it's flowed down through the lines towards us, and we're carrying that, and that the onus is on us basically to wear it, to absorb it, and to not repeat that pattern. And
Mhm.
that's when things become healed, things become better, and you basically you raise everything up to the next level, as you were saying. So that's that. Now, in terms of where was my head at, it was a very fond period of my life.
Mhm.
I had just come from the music industry. I was a bassist, and I had a really great career, great fun playing music, and I felt my calling to be an author, to write stories. It just came on really, really strong, and all these events conspired in my career to kind of lead me into this place where I was ready to switch my art form. I'd always loved the idea of creating art and inspiring people to make a better world. At first, it was music, and then I had actually wanted to write stories when I was really young, and so I came back to that. And so, anyway, I started writing, and I enrolled in a university course, and I got in, which was great. And I moved to a bungalow student accommodation, which was on a hill, which was overlooking the campus. And I started writing, started studying characters, started studying plots, and started using the skills that I had as an improvising musician, someone who spontaneously created on the spot. They call it improvisation. And transferred that over to my ability to write beautiful phrases, beautiful sentences, and obviously tell stories. And so there I was in the bungalow. I was around about 6 months in to a 3-year writing course. And I was thinking very deeply, Jared. It was basically in a meditative state, but I wasn't trying
Okay.
to meditate.
Yeah.
I just so happened to be in a meditative state, a really deep deep state of deep thought. I was surrounded by all these diagrams and templates and, pictures, like science fiction, fantasy pictures, and all this thinking about the hero's journey and what it is to be a hero. Deep, deep down, this idea of Jesus had risen in my mind. Because Jesus is basically the hero of all heroes. And so there I was just walking around my bungalow doing some tidying up, and it was like a chain reaction was set off in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
One thought led to another. I was thinking about my heritage, because my grandfather was a Jew who lived in Russia, whose entire family was massacred in a pogrom. They came and they killed his entire family when he was an 8-year-old boy. And he escaped from Russia on a train, and he eventually made it to Australia. So obviously he had a lot of trauma, and he passed some of that trauma down to my father. Mm-hmm. And I was raised by my mother on my mother's side. And the thought of that was something that was also running around deep inside my mind, and thinking about not really having a father in my life, and all these different instances in my life where things had gone a certain way, and I was starting to see how they were actually, in fact, related to my ancestry and my genealogy.
Yeah, it really does. So it's wild.
Yeah, exactly. And so all these things just coalesced, and then boom! It was like the world completely opened up. A humongous ball of light tore open the ordinary world, and I found myself standing in a tree looking up towards the past and seeing all these rows of flesh, of bodies. It was 4-dimensional.
Oh.
It was seeing time spread out from where I was back to the past, and seeing all these generational lines of bodies, human beings, row after row after row. And words can't describe it, the beauty of it. It was just extraordinary.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, it was the absolute height of all heights. And having seen that, in the weeks and the months that followed, when I became more and more sure and more certain of the reality of what I had seen, and doing research, and all of a sudden understanding that, what I had experienced had been basically the pinnacle of all mystical experience, and seeing it referred to in the Bible, opening the Bible and seeing the tree of life in the Garden of Eden. There it is on page 2 or page 3. That's what I saw. It took a long time for me to come to grips with what had occurred. And I slowly but surely, it's almost like the Big Bang. You know how the Big Bang, they say that the Big Bang occurred way back when, 14.2 billion years ago, I think it was. But in another sense, the Big Bang is still occurring. The Big Bang, the expansion is from the Big Bang is still happening. I kind of feel the same way about the experience that I had. It was like it was a Big Bang, but in a way, I'm still in it. It's still expanding out. It's still changing. It's still affecting me. I'm still growing from it. I'm still learning from it, and it's just become such a big part of who I am and how I see the world. And it's anchored me in a covenant relationship with God, and that relationship is the number one most important thing in my life, and everything else flows on from that. And so, I could go on and on about it. Probably the best way to know about it is to read the book that I wrote about it, which is called Rising Karma, because Yeah,
So
because that's basically the true story, and I wrote it in there, and everything that I was doing leading up to it, and the sort of head state that I was in, it's all there. And then there's just this moment of clarity, this moment where like the sun just burst through the clouds, and that was the vision that I had. And then after that, there's actually a lot of chaos, and there's a lot of there's a fair bit of darkness, and there's demonic attack, and there's all these kinds of different things. And yeah, as I
yeah.
said, it's like the story is still going. Here I am talking to you about it. And there were times when I thought I'd never get to this point. There were times when I thought nobody's ever going to hear this. Nobody's ever going to
Mhm.
understand. I'm never going to, and really, really dark, dark times. But
So, can I ask
thankfully,
you a can I dive into
yeah.
those? Because that's something that I've talked about
Mm.
on this a couple times, is those times where you're going through those moments that kind of mold who you are now, and you're going through these hard times where, and everybody's different, everybody's hard times are going to be what your hard times are, but for me it was very similar, where it felt like these were some of the hardest times of my life, but it felt like I was on the right track. It felt like I was doing the right things mentally. I kept feeling that ease come over me. I kept feeling that, where I would go through these moments and something would break. I would pivot and do a different thing and break another habit or a weird addiction or vice that I had. And I would realize, oh, this is something I'm doing wrong, or oh, this is something I need to balance better. And I kept doing those things, and it kept getting, I don't want to say easier, but mentally I was in a better place each time. But then the more it felt like it would hit me, where these cycles that I felt like I had broke, then they would come back and hit me again, or a thought pattern that I thought I broke would come back and hit me again. And I got really good at, I don't want to say, I guess derailing them is the best way to describe it, where not letting them spiral and kind of calling them out in the moment of, hey, this isn't real. There's no evidence that supports this. This is just an old spiral. Obviously, there was plenty of real things that happened that caused that to get to that place. But in those dark moments for me, learning to let myself feel these things, learning to let myself process it. Don't run, don't hide from these feelings, don't pretend like you don't feel these things. Just feel it. It's going to suck. It's not going to be a very pleasant moment, but we got to feel it and get through it. And the more that I was able to do that, the easier it became every time, where I would become more cognizant rather than just spiraling out of control and either getting frustrated and mad or crying or whatever it was. I would not have that reaction. I would have that, like, oh, this sucks. Like, I'm going to feel what I'm going to feel, and I'm going to let this do what it's going to do. I'm going to understand it. I'm going to process it as this, and I'm going to move forward. I'm not going to let this sit. We're not going to dwell on this for multiple days. We need to just hash out what we need to hash out now, speak on what we need to speak on, and let's get past this. Some of them are a little more sticky. Some of them you have to talk about a little more often to get them out, I feel like. But for you, when you hit those dark moments, what were some of your, I guess, abilities to pull yourself out of those?
Jared, for me, it felt like I was making progress. And I kept on telling myself, I'm getting there. I'm getting there. I'm sure that I'm getting there. I feel like I'm making progress. But on the outside, nothing was changing. Um, but I actually, believe it or not, there's a place where I live in Australia, in Melbourne, or in Victoria, which is the state that I live in, which is in the south of Australia. And a it's on the beach. It's called the 12 Apostles. And basically, you've got the beach, you've got the coastline, and you've got these rock formations that are sitting around about 50 meters out in the water, which are just these tall monoliths of rock, and they call them the 12 Apostles. And I was just there actually a couple of weeks ago, and we were learning about the way that they formed. And the way that they form is that the water is continually 24 hours a day, it's bashing itself up against the rock. The waves are coming in and they're slamming themselves up against the rock. And I sort of thought, okay, so every time one of the waves smashes up against the rock, a little bit more of the rock disappears. And the next wave comes in and a little bit more of the rock disappears. And that's when you're left with these 12 apostles. But apparently that's not the way that it works. It's not that every time that a wave bashes against the rock, that a bit of the rock disappears. But what happens is every time the wave comes up against the rock, the structure itself becomes a little bit weaker. And so the structure gets a bit weaker, and then finally the wave will come along where a whole massive section of rock actually crumbles and breaks down. When I look back at the way that I healed and the way that I sort of overcome even things like sleeping in, I used to sleep in really, really badly to the point where I'd be sleeping until 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the evening. And the way that I've overcome these vices, it hasn't been, it's been like, it felt like it was getting better and it felt like it was getting better, but nothing outside was changing. And then the damn wall breaks and suddenly you have a big breakthrough, and all that hard internal spiritual work that you've been doing finally actually makes a big difference outside in the world. And in my really dark days, that's how I found that it worked. Now, believe it or not, I've actually found that I am able to chip away at it and just get a little bit better today, a little bit better tomorrow, wake up a little bit earlier, and now I get up at a decent hour every morning. And so, but it did really feel like what you asked me was that it felt like I was getting somewhere on the inside, but on the outside, nothing was changing. But then there'd be a big breakthrough, and something would really be overcome. Yeah.
And that kind of gives you that ability to push through those things. When you start to see it enough and those patterns come back, for me anyway, it clicked in my brain, because the amount of times that I would go through something and it would be in the moment the worst thing in the world, and then either the next day or the couple days to follow, there would be some sort of good that would come from that bad, whatever it was, whether it be a lesson, whether it be a new mindset, whether it be a new opportunity. It always brought a new thing in front of me, whether it was like, oh, hey, we kicked this habit, we saw this in the moment, and I became very aware of them, where it was like, even when I wasn't doing great with them, I was still very aware of what was going on in the moment at most times, where I would see them and it was like, oh, I'm doing this again. Like, and I still do it. I do it with food still to this day. It's one of the hardest ones to crack for me, where I can not eat all day long. I can do just fine. I don't want food, but the moment that nighttime sugar craving hits, I act like a child. And it's like, why can't I not stop doing this? I'm working very hard in the gym. We do not need 2 things of Pop-Tarts at 11 o'clock at night. That was silly. Don't do that again. But I have not done it tonight yet, but we're still early, I guess. But it's interesting how throughout this process, it really does magnify these weaknesses, I guess. That, I guess, just the easiest way for me to point out for myself anyway, is like, it kind of points out the weaknesses in your game, where it's like, ooh, okay, this thing can really hurt me. This thing still really gets to me. I'm still holding on to this thing. I'm still holding on to this past trauma. And it feels never ending at times. Where, I guess, did you run into this a lot through your journey, where you would feel like, oh, that has to be it. Like, we've done it. We got through everything. There can't be any more things that we have to fix. We for sure got through all of them. And then you have a couple of days of really good peace and you're like, yeah, we did it. And then the same thing comes back, or you have another loop come back in. It's like, what the fuck? Why is this coming again? I thought we were out of this.
Definitely. Jared, it's funny because the more vices that I used to have, when I used to be riddled with tons and tons of vices, I used to think that there was nothing wrong with me. And then the better that I got and the more that I overcame those really, really big things, the more I started to see, oh, hang on, I've got a bit of a problem there, and I could do better with that, and I could do better with that. So it's almost like the worse that you are, the less you're able to see how much is actually
Mhm.
wrong with you. And then the better that you get, then you start to be able to pick up on all these little areas where you're able to improve, you know. And um, it's important to celebrate the victories as well, because
Of
like you're
course.
probably aware, you go, oh, here's something that I've got to work on. If you overcome that, and then you straight away go on to the next thing, because there'll always be a next thing. You know, you've got to celebrate your victories. You've got to say, hey, look at where I was, look at where I am now, and now look at
Mhm.
how much better the world is around me because I've come here. And uh, you know, that's the journey, isn't it? And
Mhm.
it's like there always is a destination, but also the horizon is also continually expanding. um,
Y
but I truly do believe that there is an ultimate pinnacle that we are able, slowly but surely, even as a humanity as a whole, that we are genuinely moving towards. And like you were saying before, if we can find our own unique identity within that great thing that we can contribute, that goes towards that, in a sense, that's a part of what I consider to be eternal life, because that contribution becomes a fundamental part of the structure, that if you were
Mhm.
to take your part away, the whole structure would collapse. That if you were
Y
to remove any single individual story from the whole, all of a sudden the whole story wouldn't make sense. And that's why it is important,
That's
like you were
interesting.
saying, to find your own position, your own place, and what you can contribute as an individual that's unique about you, that nobody else can.
Yeah. I always think about it too, if like in the mindset of back in like the pioneer days when everybody just had their thing and that's what they did. They did their thing, they bartered and traded with that item or whatever it was that their skill was, and that's how they operated. They were all able to trade their goods and services to survive and to make things work and to do their thing. And then it turned into this commercialized thing where you have these giant corporations that, yes, they're giving tons of people jobs, but then it almost takes that human thing out of it. And what if everybody really does just have a piece of the puzzle? Everyone collectively, we have this like gigantic globe of an ant colony, and we all just have our own little piece of the thing. And if everybody figures out how to do their thing, everybody gets a little bit happier, the world gets a little more peaceful. And it always interests me, like especially getting to have cool conversations like this and hearing just again another person completely on the other side of the world having a lot of these same experiences. It kind of like solidifies that to me, that the more we pull back to our natural human selves and our wiring, and we get away from this like day to day arguing with it's, I mean, social media is so much of it because it's just given, it's, I always look at it almost like the tree of knowledge where we literally have every bit of information all the time, and I don't think our brains are wired for that. We're not meant to know what everyone's doing all the time. We're not meant to know all of the news at any given moment every day. I don't think, I'm pretty positive it's just frying our brains, because the more I back off of social media, the more everything gets easier, not having to see all of the negative and wild and crazy constantly. It's like, oh, I can just live life and I don't have to have all of the chaos at my fingertips at all times. And boy, does my brain work a heck of a lot better.
Mm. Hmm. Yeah, I hear what you're saying 100%. And technology, it always has the potential to do damage. So, you know, we understand nuclear energy, and we can use it to power up all our homes, and you know, give us the electricity or whatever that we need, or we can use it to destroy one another and build bombs. And um, you know, and you're right. You've got to be able to have strong boundaries, because if you don't have those kind of boundaries, then you'll just be swamped by all the technology and all the information that's available. So it's more important than ever to have that sense of identity, of individuality, to know where you are and to have those boundaries. I used to have very, very little boundaries, and that's
Mhm.
one of the main reasons why I was so susceptible to negative influences. Um, so there's nothing inherently wrong with the technology itself. It's the way that you use it, or the way that
Mhm.
humanity uses it. Um, good and evil. Technology is immune or neutral to good and evil. The good or the evil, it comes from human beings. So
And I think
it's
so much
always
of
good
it
to
is that.
know that we are. Sorry, it's always good
Oh,
to
you're
know that
fine.
we are actually empowered from the inside, and that the good or the evil comes from human beings, not from things on the
Yeah.
outside. I think that's something that gets forgotten a lot of the time.
Well, because it's not going anywhere. It's going to be part of life. I've always felt like that with a lot of these things, especially with how AI is going to continue to grow and develop. There's no going away from it. I don't think. I don't foresee a world that that's not a thing, but it can be used in so much of a different way to help with the human experience rather than basically make us mindless zombies. Like I just literally just had an
Mm,
experience with my kid. He was working on his algebra homework and my brain just does not, like, I can help, but it was like the questions he was asking, I'm like, hey, we're gonna have to use AI as your parent tonight because I have no idea, man. Like, I wish I could help you, but like, this stuff did not retain in my brain. So let's learn together.
mm,
But rather than like letting
mm,
him use that as just a way to get an answer, I was like, ask it to teach us. Let's learn this thing and let's figure it out. So we're not using this as a crutch to just give
mm,
you the answer. Let's have it teach us what we're missing here and what we need to do. And it did, and it gave us the answers. And I
mm,
feel like I use that for a lot of things in that similar way, whether it be with my diet, with nutrition, with learning about God and religion and the Bible, whatever it is. I can use it in a way that I'm not it, not just taking it for what it's saying, and because a lot of times it'll pander to you, but also utilizing it to learn, utilizing it to enhance myself, enhance my experience, rather than almost take over for me, because it's a lot with comfort in our world. And I feel like that was something that made me weak for a long time. Was I was that person that went to comfort for everything. It didn't matter what it was, whether it be like having the Google light bulbs that I could just talk to and tell it to turn off, and like just all of the stupid silly things, constantly ordering food, constantly having it delivered to our house, just literally never wanting to leave the house. And I didn't realize that was what I was doing, was turning into the movie Wally, where we're just going to end up floating around on computers because that's all that's left because we've destroyed everything. And it was like, oh, they've done
mm,
this with so many things, where the transition of money, where you used to have to hand someone money, then it went to a card, then it went to tap. Now you can just tap your phone and walk away. And then it's going to go to the
yeah.
Amazon stores where you walk in and it knows who you are and it clocks your stuff while you're shopping. There's no humans in sight. And that's just where most things are going to go, it looks like. So utilizing this thing to enhance us as humans, to learn, to grow, I feel like is our best case scenario with whatever this thing's going to turn into. But there's almost too much corporate greed and power, I guess, that it kind of makes me a little nervous. So then it's just that hope and pray, and let's hope that everything goes great.
Yeah, exactly. That's so true. And I think that you've really circled around the answer there. And also something that you were saying before about the seven deadly sins and the
Mhm,
seven holy virtues. Every sin has a corresponding virtue. And
mhm,
what you seem to be talking about there, it seemed to me, was on the one hand, there's temperance, be temperate in all things. On the other hand, there's gluttony. And
mhm,
it doesn't matter what the situation is. We could be way back in the Stone Age and we could be saying, oh, you're using fire too gluttonously. Fire is the only technology that we have. Too much
Yeah.
fire is gluttonous. You've got to use fire with temperance. And every new technology that comes up, we're faced with the same challenge. Are we going to use this gluttonously? Or are we going to use it as a crutch and lean all over it? And they said the same
Yeah.
things about seatbelts. When they first had cars, and they said, you know what, we're going to put in seatbelts for cars because people were driving around without seatbelts. And the same thing was said then. They said, seatbelts, people are going to use them as a crutch. Now people are going to drive around more recklessly because they think the seatbelts are going to save them. So it seems to be this recurring pattern that it doesn't matter what the new technology that comes in, there's always a higher degree of difficulty, if you will, that, hey, this might turn into more gluttonous behavior. Ultimately,
Yeah.
the kingdom is within you. So it depends on how sturdy, how stable you are to be able to stick to those age-old vices and virtues like you were talking about. Exercise temperance in all things. Don't be gluttonous with it. And that's the steep learning curve that we're on. But you're right. Of course,
I love the
there
way
will
you
always
said
be
that,
those
though.
who. Mm,
I I never thought about it that way of it being like, because I've had that moment with a lot of other things where I'm like, oh, this falls into that gluttonous. Like I can have a dessert or a snack. I don't need to have three of them. And it's fallen into that with so many different things where I'm like, oh, that's kind of gluttonous too. And then you just said that I'm like, oh, that is the exact same where it kind of falls into most of these things where you can use a lot of these modern day new things. You just have to be careful in the same way. Like you just said, like taking it all the way back to fire. I was like, oh, that's such a cool way to look at it of like that was the only thing they had back then, but you could still use that gluttonously. We could still overuse it. You can still do the wrong thing with it. And that's such a fascinating, cool way to look at it. I love that.
mm.
Oh, well,
Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate that. I think, um, I really admire American culture, and I do think America is one of the greatest countries in the world. I think it's such a brilliant country, and there are so many different kinds of people. One thing about Australia that I think is really good is that from Australia we kind of get to have a bird's eye view of things, and
mhm.
we can kind of see things from a little bit more of a distance without being so immersed in things. And I think that that what I just said then, it sort of comes from that in a certain respect. It comes from being able to sort of just sit back and observe a little bit from afar. Um, yeah, that's just my perspective of it. But I'm glad that spoke to you, and yeah, that's the kind of perspective that I do try to put forth, because I think that ultimately the power comes from within human beings, and that it's really easy to point the finger and say this person's evil or that technology is evil, but ultimately the good and the evil that comes from within the own person's human
Mhm.
soul. And probably one of the greatest tricks that the devil plays on people is he gets inside your heart and he makes you think that he's somewhere else,
Yep.
and that you've really got to look inside and say,
And he's
yeah,
tricky too.
exercise those virtues. Don't get into the vices. Really weigh yourself up, like you were saying, virtues and vices, gluttony versus temperance, and all the other ones. I can't remember what they are off the top of my head. But
Oh, I love it. Well, I feel like that's like the perfect way to kind of end this and tie this up. It's been an absolute pleasure meeting you. Please promote a way where people can find your books, where people can find any of your work, and where they can find you on social media.
sure. Well, you can Google my name, Eugene Samolin. You can find me on LinkedIn. I have a blog on Amazon. I have 4 books for sale. So I guess join my mailing list. That's that will be probably the best way to stay in touch, and we can converse. We can talk about things. I share my works. I publish short pieces, and I've got another novel coming up, which will be released in the next 2-3 months. So
Oh, I love that. What's the newest one about?
the newest one is set in Australia, and it focuses on Australian history and culture, which is a really, really touchy subject. As you're probably aware, there are First Nations Australians, and the history of Australia is quite new.
Oh,
And there are a lot of beautiful, beautiful stories and mythologies connected to First Nations Australians. And it's an attempt to reconcile what we have as our knowledge based on God and what we know about God, and then First Nations mythologies. And ultimately, it's just an action adventure novel, like my other ones, a hero's journey. There's a hero,
yeah.
there's bad guys, and but beneath that, there's sort of this undercurrent of, working towards reconciliation and helping Australian culture to take the next step.
I love it. I love that it seems like your ultimate goal is in all these categories is just to unite people and kind of bring people together as, hey, we're all humans. And that's exactly why I wanted to do this, was to normalize that we're all humans. Everybody's trying to figure out whatever in the world this is that we're doing every day, but we all do it and we all go through shit. We all have failures. We all have things that happen that are cool, that are bad, and it's just life. We all deal with it. It doesn't matter who you are. You don't really get through it without dealing with it. So, well, thank you so much. It has been an absolute pleasure meeting you. You have been so much fun. I unfortunately have got to get to bed because I already suck at getting up in the morning with my children for school. So it is going to be a late night and a very early morning. So thank you so much for your time. It was awesome. And enjoy the rest of your day. You have a full day ahead of you.
Mm-hmm. Likewise. Thank you so much for having me, Jared.
Thank you. Bye.